I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, today's the day anti-Israel protesters are supposed to pack up and leave the University of Washington after the college gave in to some of their ridiculous demands. Plus, who will stand up for the girls? Also, California shows us exactly what not to do on the homeless crisis. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Coming up today on... Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving Common Sense a comeback. One of these days, we won't have any technical snafus.
I was trying to buy you some time. And
thanks, Nicole. I appreciate it. Couldn't find my earphones. Anyway, good to see all of you guys. The president of Iran is dead. In equally disturbing news, I broke a nail today. Both of those things are just about as serious about as sad. President of Iran died. In sadder news, I broke a nail today.
Wow.
Not too concerned with that. Also, a lot of sadness and depression today, I'm sure, on the campus of the University of Washington. They have to pack up. Well, I will believe it as soon as every single tent is gone and all the protesters are gone. Our friend Jonathan Cho, of course, was down there this morning taking a look at... I mean, there's still quite a bit of activity there. So I'm not 100% confident that everyone is eager to leave. I had also pointed out when I was, and this is of course the anti-Israel protest that has been going on there now for several weeks. And I pointed out though, when I was there were just legit homeless people. So are the legit homeless people going to leave? And of course they screwed up the grass and stuff. And this goes, with what we have said on this show often. If you give a mouse a cookie, and that is exactly today what the University of Washington is doing, is it gave all of those protesters cookies. And if the University of Washington believes that this is the last time that these exact groups of activists and protesters are going to do this, they are sadly mistaken. It's actually shocking to me that they don't see that yet. It's shocking to me that they don't understand that you had this group there, what I consider some of them to be domestic terrorists, and that's not an indictment of people who were there peacefully protesting, but the people who actually went there and took over an area of the campus, ran their little Antifa security guards, graffiti all over the buildings. Those are domestic terrorists, and the university negotiated with terrorists. And we know that these protesters had this long list of demands, trying to get the university to divest from entities that might have some sort of tie to Israel or to weapons like Boeing. And we said all along, you have to go in there and just remove them. Because if you give in to their demands, they're just going to understand, and rightfully so, that the next time they really, really want something, that they can just do the exact same thing and they're going to get the exact same result. So what I want to do today is go through a few of the demands that the University of Washington agreed to, because some of them are just flat out absurd. I mean, it's a long list of things. So let's dive into them. So the Board of Regents has established policies and procedures for divestment requests. The university president, the chair of the Board of Regents, and any staff invited by the board chair will meet in person with no more than 5 student representatives on the divestment request. So basically what they're saying is, hey, we have a new way that we're going to go about this. If you think that you want to tell us that we need to divest our money from something, then we're going to have it be no more than 5 student representatives, but then you can come in and we'll listen to your request for divestment. Let's see. The university will be transparent about its investment holdings and fund managers. The university has no direct investments in Boeing, major weapons manufacturers, or companies domiciled in Israel. To the extent there are additional calls to divest from additional companies, we will be transparent about if and how the university is invested in these companies and make available our process for divestment. Okay. The university will be transparent about Boeing's support for the university, so anyone opposed proposed can decline Boeing's support. The president and provost agree to work with faculty leadership to identify the appropriate faculty senate count, blah, blah, some of this stuff. It's like, for the love. The university, get this one. The university has an active task force on Islamophobia. No mention of anti-Semitism. The university has an active task force on Islamophobia. The task force is assessing the extent to which students, faculty, and staff are experiencing discrimination or harassment due to their identities, with an emphasis on those who identify as Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, or of Middle Eastern, North African origin. Get this for a second before I move on. So we have a protest that by many accounts, including our own eyeballs, was anti-Semitic in nature, glorifying the murder of Jewish people, innocent Israelis. And part of your demands that you gave into to this group was to put a special emphasis on people of Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, or Middle Eastern descent who are subjected to Islamophobia. Like, look, I don't think Islamophobia is bad, but that's not what we're talking about here. This has been anti-Semitism. And were there maybe some individual instances of Islamophobia? Sure, I don't know, but I haven't heard about any of them. I haven't seen them on video. I haven't seen Islamophobic graffiti all over the campus. Honestly, this is a knife in the back, and you just turn it to Jewish students, to Jewish faculty, to parents who have their kids. It's just insane. They go on to say, with a commitment from students, faculty, staff, and community supporters to voluntarily end the encampment on a permanent basis, the university will, oh my gosh, this one enrages me, forego referrals for citations or conduct violations for camping. Consider the commitment to voluntarily end the encampment a significantly favorable mitigating factor in the resolution of any student conduct matters related to the encampment. The university will follow its non-retaliation policies with respect to students, staff, and faculty who participated in the encampment. Get that? So if you were out there, engaged in unlawful civil disobedience, then it's okay. Like you're leaving willingly after a few weeks, so we're not going to retaliate against you. You're not going to get in trouble as a student for camping and disrupting your fellow students for weeks on end. No big deal. So not only are they giving in to their demands, but these students, those who were students in the encampment, are just going to get off scot-free. That's what they're saying here. So what would stop these students and activists from doing it again? Like maybe next week it's for climate change, or maybe after that it's for they hate cops again and, they're just revisiting 2020. Or maybe it's, I don't know, we hate Amazon, divest from Amazon. You name it, endless numbers of things. And gosh, if I kept getting my way by doing something, if I had no moral compass or clarity, I would just keep doing it too. If you give a mouse a cookie. So a couple other things that were in this list of agreements. So they'll recommend some folks from the group to serve on the UW Board of Regents Divestment Committee. Like the fact that they actually have a divestment committee is pretty insane to me. Scholarships for displaced Palestinian students from Gaza. Okay, more on that in a second. A discussion in a faculty committee about changes to the university's student abroad program, increased connections with Palestinian universities, more transparency about the university's investment holdings. And then, of course, the president, Kruse, voiced her support for a ceasefire in Gaza. And that was sort of part of her multiple statements saying, well, I support a ceasefire, but we can't have this camp here. So anyway, a lot of cowardice. And this is just so true for so much of what we've seen happen in the state of Washington, in Seattle, and why we've started to really go downhill is because you saw this kowtowing to the crazies, right? Where it's, people will show up, maybe 10 of them, and they'll yell at council chambers. And so then the city council will just do what they say. And then the next time that group wants something, they show up, they yell at council chambers, the council does what they say. And until people start and have started putting their foot down, then you don't see that change. I give a lot of credit to the current Seattle City Council, which has started to try to operate in a little bit of a different way by saying, like, no, not only are we not going to do what you want, but we're going to call the cops when you storm a council meeting and act in a threatening manner. So even at a state level, so much of what happened in 2020, 2021 around bad policies when it comes to public safety was the result of giving in to the demands of fringe groups who now believe that they can get whatever they want if they continue to behave in the same way. It's also the result of absolute, utter cowardice from the top down, starting with Governor Jay Inslee. So Governor Inslee has been nowhere to be found during all of this. This is the campus of his alma mater. And I've said a million times that if they were right-wing neo-Nazis who took up residency in the Quad, where he used to go to college, that he would have had a press conference, he would be speaking out about it daily. Hell, he might even have sent in the National Guard to deal with it or the State Patrol. Not a question in my mind. Especially if it had been during the Trump administration. He had some Trumpsters down there trying to take over the campus. Is there really a question? Does anybody want to debate with me on that point? I know it's just a hypothetical situation, but I feel pretty confident considering every year on January 6th, he speaks out about what happened 3 years ago, but he can't speak out ever about any civil unrest happening in our state and said he didn't even know about CHOP. So anyway, after it started to be reported that an agreement had been reached between these protesters and the university, finally, Governor Inslee has something to say about it. He came out in a tweet and he said, "This resolution is welcome news. Constructive engagement prevailed in spite of escalating tensions and condemnable acts to bring this saga to a peaceful end." Let me hone in on a couple of those lines there for a second. Constructive engagement prevailed in spite of escalating tensions and condemnable acts. So you're saying that there were condemnable acts, yet we didn't hear you condemn any acts. So you're saying you knew that on the campus of your alma mater, in the state where you're the governor, you knew that there were condemnable acts taking place, but you didn't say anything about it? That's kind of telling on yourself, isn't it? And of course, he's such a coward because, and this is the same for Bob Ferguson as it is for Jay Inslee, they only speak out about things when it's politically palatable. So when they feel like, okay, now there's been a resolution, now it's safe, right? And now I can act like, oh, I didn't support this all along. But they never speak out about things when it might be bad for them politically speaking, and it might hurt them with their base. That Jay Inslee and CHOP, Bob Ferguson in police pursuits, never said anything about it for 3 years. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Then he runs for governor. Voters push an initiative that's adopted by the Democrat-led legislature to put police pursuits back the way they were. And all of a sudden, Bob Ferguson's on King 5 News saying, I never supported the rollback of police pursuits. It's shocking to me that more people don't see that and fault them for it. That they are always waiting to do what's right, to say what's right, until it'll hurt them the least, hurt their political ambitions the least. That's not leadership in any sense. And I would have preferred the governor just not said anything at all at this point, because now he's going to come out and say, constructive engagement prevailed. A lot of what happened over the last few weeks was not constructive by any stretch. And he ends it saying, to bring this saga to a peaceful end. A peaceful end? So are you forgetting all the stuff that happened that wasn't peaceful at all? People were assaulted there. And now it's a peaceful end. It really is truly just the epitome of cowardice. The people who we have in charge of government, who we have in charge of our universities. So we'll see what happens after today. But I have no question in my mind, and you guys all have common sense, and you know exactly what's going to happen. Whatever the next issue of the day is, they'll be back in the Quad camping, and they'll have their list of demands, and the university will let it all happen all over again, unless they're right-wingers. I almost want to encourage a right-wing group to try this out so we can see how it goes. Like, let's have some students. I mean, I hate to say it. What are the Proud Boys up to these days? The Proud Boys are just as far to the right as some of these Antifa types are to the left. So Proud Boys, go ahead. Go into the campus and make whatever sorts of demands. See if you can get a couple students to join you. You only need a handful, and then people will call it a student protest. And then stay there and see how long, how many hours, at minutes probably, It'll take for Governor Inslee to put out a press release and a press conference and to send in someone to get you out of there. I actually would love to see that as an experiment. I mean, I don't want anyone to get hurt. I don't want the Proud Boys, obviously, to be taking over any part of the college campus. But I feel like at this point, we have to show in some way the absurdity of it, the hypocrisy of it, and the danger of giving in to fringe groups who want to sort of use something like this as leverage. Crazy stuff. We'll have to check back in tomorrow and see if everyone is indeed gone. But when we were there, remember, Nicole? There were people just passed out on benches, clearly drug addicts.
Absolutely.
Like,
there was
sleeping in tents.
some homeless guys that were off to the side that weren't really a part of any of the
like
groups.
60.
But then behind us, they just kept yelling, yeah, yeah.
That's so true. We were there. There's people were, kind of yelling at us or whatever. And the guy that was clearly just homeless in one of the tents was like, yeah, you tell him. Like,
he didn't know what to say.
Just playing along, just crazy stuff. All right. I just want to remind you guys that I'm probably going to do this like virtually every day from now until July 5th. There is a uphill battle right now, an uphill battle to collect enough signatures to stop our state government from banning natural gas in your homes and in your businesses. So we talked on the show last week about Initiative 2066, which is the Stop the Gas Ban, Protect Energy Choice Initiative. But this doesn't repeal anything that's happened at the state level. So I want to be clear about that. This isn't a referendum. It's actually much more difficult than a referendum. But there was this entire debate last legislative session about, are we going to stop new natural gas hookups in homes, to save the environment? And there was pushback. So they ended up diluting a bill in the legislature that basically is going to speed up PSE's move away from natural gas. And eventually, I don't know if it's going to be in 5 years. I don't know if it's going to be in 10 years, but it is going to result in the forced electrification of all of your homes. So if you use natural gas right now, if you're a business that uses natural gas, that is where things are heading. That is not my opinion. That is based on why would you have a bill that's talking about moving PSE more quickly away from natural gas if you don't intend to allow them to move away from natural gas. So Initiative 2066, signatures are being collected as we speak. Here's the thing. They need 405,000 signatures by July 5th. This is a very, very tall task. I signed it this weekend. It was at an event I was at in Snohomish. So I quickly pen to paper, but 405,000 signatures because they want it on the November ballot with the other 3 initiatives that are going to be on the ballot, because this goes into this whole narrative of vote yes, pay less. Because, man, if they make you electrify your home and it's all gas right now, that's tens of thousands of dollars out of your pocket. So this bundles in nicely to the other initiatives Let's Go Washington has, all of which we support. And so this is certainly another one we support. So I just want to encourage you guys that there's no time to waste on this. This isn't like the last initiatives where, man, they were collecting because they were sending it to the legislature, right? So they had all the time in the world to collect initiatives. They collected initiatives from early summer 2023 all the way through, you'll recall, to the end of December. We don't have that kind of time. So if you go to letsgowa.com, they have, similar to what they had for the others, they have an interactive map where you can find locations to sign and also locations to drop off initiatives if you volunteered to help gather, because you can request through the website that they send you some of these forms. So if you want your family or your friends to sign on, you can order forms, get them sent to you, and then you can bring them back and drop them off or even mail them in. So please do this today. Go to letsgowa.com. We have no time to waste. Has to be done before our nation's birthday on July 4th. So don't wait until July 4th weekend to find a place or a parade or something to sign this, because this isn't about, again, it's not about forcing someone to use natural gas. It's about giving us a choice. Do not take away our energy choices. Do not force us toward electrification when we know, that our system as it is performs very poorly in bad weather. There's all these issues we see other states having of a complete drain on the system, a stretch on the system. And so for poor families, what do you expect them to do if you take away their ability to heat their home with natural gas? And then we're in a situation where, power went out. So it's just unbelievable from a common sense perspective and from a financial perspective, where you continue to put your energy goals, your climate change goals on the backs of the middle class. If you can't come up with ways to help our environment and to stave off climate change without devastating the middle class, then you're not trying hard enough. And I'm not the only one saying that. State Senator Mark Mullet, a Democrat who's running for governor, he said the same thing. And it's one of the reasons he hasn't supported a lot of those policies that his party has pushed through, is because he says, look, these are hurting the middle class. And you talk all the time about our backward tax structure and how we need to help out the working poor. And then you push policies like this that only hurt the working poor and the people who can least afford to pay. So let's go wa.com. Make sure you go there and you take care of this ASAP. All right, if you're in the market to sell your home at some point in 2024, make sure you check out our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. We've had a few unDivided fans who've reached out to us and said they're so happy they went with Wes. Bryce and Carla ended up selling their home in Bellevue so they could retire to Florida. They listed their home in January, and Bryce said he was just really impressed with the knowledge of the market that Wes had.
His attention to detail, he was extraordinarily detailed, and he knew our neighborhood and our properties in the neighborhood very well. He gave us a really great comp plan, showed us what other properties were selling for, and most importantly, he helped us to understand the dangers of overpricing. And we thought what we knew we could get for the property, but we didn't, at the same time, he breathed an air of reality into us, said, look, guys, you want to get that out of the property, you're going to need to start at a certain point, and you're going to let the market come to you. And that's exactly what happened. He was exactly right about that.
Yeah, they ended up selling their home in just 7 days over list price, and now they're just basking in the sun in Florida. Very jealous. But Wes, I hate to put it like this, but I think a lot of people turn to real estate as like maybe a second career or something, which is totally fine. But Wes has been doing this for a long time. Wes has weathered a lot of ups and downs in the market, a lot of different interest rate situations, and he's very good at what he does. And he's always going to be honest and realistic with you. So reach out to Wes Jones, sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. You can start by using their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. All right, we are failing our children on so many fronts in Washington state. We talk a lot about education, poor test scores, focusing on the wrong things. That's certainly a failure of kids, but also on public safety, frankly. You can do everything right as a parent. You can keep your kids out of trouble. You can get them involved in extracurricular activities. I mean, man, you could be a strict parent. You can do all these things, but our crime crisis has gotten so out of control. I don't intend this to be hyperbole, but it's to the point where it feels like families aren't safe anywhere. There is a horrifying piece of video that was released over the weekend. There was a youth baseball game in Auburn, when shots erupted nearby. I'm going to play that video in a moment. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. So this happened near Isaac Evans Park, which is, if you're not familiar, it's across the river from Brannan Park, if you're kind of familiar with the Auburn area. But, it's summer, and so there's an increase in outdoor activities. Certainly a lot of parents have kids participating in extracurriculars. And there was a youth baseball game going on. And there's a video. It looks like it's from sort of an online, and people can log in and watch the youth baseball online, that captured a horrifying moment where there was gunfire exchange between two feuding groups. I imagine this is a gang situation. And here is the view of how things played out on the baseball diamond.
Get down, you guys.
I mean, can you imagine being a parent, beautiful day, green grass, baseball field, kids playing, and to hear that gunfire nearby and to be screaming at your child, get down, get down, get down. We talk a lot in this state about wanting to protect kids from gun violence, which obviously is a very noble goal. whether it's in school or whether it's at a theater or a baseball game. I'm not a parent, but I imagine those sorts of things are horrifying for a parent when you hear about them. But we really go about these things the wrong way. And I'm not going to get into this big debate on gun control and the gun laws that have been put down. I mean, that's a debate we've had many, many times over again. But this very clearly is a gang situation. The Auburn Police Department, and by the way, 2 people were shot during this. They weren't part of the baseball game, but in the area where the shooting was actually happening. They were brought to a hospital. They aren't expected to die. But, you had one of the vehicles, for instance, fled the scene, crashed, suspects ran. They weren't able to track him down. This has all the trappings to me of gang violence. And we have a political class that refuses to talk about gang violence. They talk about gun violence as if these inanimate objects are the things that are just erupting in gunfire and firing themselves. And again, I'm not going to sit here and have a debate with people, when we're talking about the safety of kids right now on gun control. But when you refuse, for political reasons, ideological reasons, trying to score points with your base, when you refuse to have a conversation about what's really happening here, you're refusing to do so at the expense of human life. That's it. Bottom line. This is gang violence. A lot of the shootings that are happening. Frankly, a lot of the crime that's happening. The stolen vehicles that are then used to perpetrate crimes like this, drive-by shootings, or robberies, or whatever it is. But you want to bring everything back to guns, and you're not looking at these deeper societal issues that are at play. And you're not saying, we're going to throw the book at every person who uses a gun to commit a crime. We're going to throw the book at gang members who steal firearms or vehicles to commit crimes. Because I guess it's not, politically palatable to talk about increased punishment these days? To talk about holding criminals accountable? I've always said it on the gun control thing. I'll have any conversation you want to have about guns. And they want to restrict, what people do and law-abiding gun owners and all of that. But at the same time, how many cases have we covered on this show where someone uses a gun to commit a crime, a felony, or kill someone? And automatic firearm enhancements are dropped, pled down, negotiated away. Where someone commits a drive-by shooting, judge sends them home on house arrest or sets their bail low. You want to talk about guns, but you want to forget about all these other things that are contributing to the crisis. And you want to handcuff police so they can't pursue stolen vehicles. So those stolen vehicles, often driven by people who are using them to commit other crimes, can just go about and do that. It tells me, the politicians who do that they don't care about human life. They don't care about the consequences of their actions. I mean, for every parent at that game, it's I get asked all the time, what is it going to take for people to wake up to the crime crisis, right? Because a lot of us see it and we're like, it's gotten horrible. It's undeniable. How can people just be allowing the single party in power to get away with some of these things and not push back in a meaningful way? And sadly, sometimes I think it takes being the victim yourself or having something like that happen right before your eyes. I hate that it takes that, but I really think it does. And now you're seeing that the violence that's taking over our communities, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It has so ingrained itself in our communities. And the only way to solve the crisis is to expect that our elected leaders will actually focus on the root causes of the problem and on things that work, not on policies that are going to get them a big flashy headline in the Seattle Times. That segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. All right. A lot of frustration for me over the weekend seeing some of these headlines. Very few people are willing to stand up for girls. I just don't know how we got to this place as a society. I mean, God, I remember, decades of fighting for women and fighting for girls and making sure that they have all the opportunities that are available to them and they can succeed and aren't being held down. And now one of, I think, the most important things for any young person, participating in athletics and the team environment, building a community, learning all the skills that come along, not physical skills necessarily, but all the skills and social skills you learn from that environment. And we're just letting girls' sports die. We're just letting girls' sports, we're giving girls' sports over to a fringe minority of people who, for some reason, inexplicable, believe it's acceptable to let biological men, biological boys compete in athletics against girls. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. So there's a trio of stories that we're going to talk about today, and I want to start in Kashmir. So over the weekend, there was the Junior Track Olympics that were happening, and I mean, you can guess what happened if you haven't seen the pictures and the stories already. So on Saturday, an 8th grade biological boy took first place in the women's 1,600-meter race. And again, that's at the Junior Track Olympics. I'm not going to read the boy's name, but the boy finished with a time of 5 minutes, 46 seconds. And that's notable because had he participated against other boys, he would not have gotten first place. He would have gotten 10th place. That's because girls and boys are built differently. It doesn't matter if it's track, it doesn't matter if it's basketball, it doesn't matter if it's swimming. Boys and girls are just built differently. And it's okay to say that. Even if you are a boy on gender hormone therapy, your physical body is still built differently. So you have a boy who beat out girls in a very important track meet who wouldn't even have placed in the top 5, barely would have made it into the top 10 in the boys' track meet. And it's just unacceptable. There was a parent who posted about it. This is a biological male taking away a victory from girls in the girls' 1,600 meter at the Junior Olympics in Kashmir. Methow Valley School District number 350 must be proud. And I give a lot of credit to that parent for saying something, because you know that there are an awful lot of adults who watched that happen, maybe even knew about it happening because the boy is on their child's team, who were enraged by it, but who would never, ever say anything. Because, oh my gosh, you cannot say anything about transgender kids or about them participating in athletics. You can't do that because you're going to be vilified, and you probably will be vilified. And I imagine this particular parent probably got some angry comments and backlash as well. But, just saying something about it and telling people this is what's going on, that in and of itself these days is like an act of bravery. But it's shocking to me how few people are willing to stand up for girls. One of the issues, I think, before we get to the other example of this in Oregon, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. So first, I think there's people who are so ideologically driven that they're really like, yeah, there's no difference and boys should be able to compete against girls. That to me is like a mental illness where ideology is so ingrained in you that you have actually convinced yourself that there's no difference between a boy and a girl. But then there's people who I think don't say anything because these are kids. And I get that part of it. Like, this is an 8th grade boy. And that's why I'm not going to read his name and put his name out there, although I'm sure it's everywhere already. I'm not angry with the boy. I'm not angry with the boy. I'm angry with the adults who say this is acceptable. And I'm angry with the adults who haven't pushed back against things like this, whose actions have resulted in an 8th grade boy being up on a podium and a picture of him being viewed hundreds of thousands of times all over the internet. Like, yes, the 8th grade boy, I don't know if they should know better, if he should know better, that, hey, this isn't fair, what you're participating against these girls. Again, it's an 8th grader. I'm not going to sit here and judge his actions too harshly. But I do know there's a hell of a lot of parents who know that this isn't right. Same thing happened in Oregon. And I do believe, by the way, that there are more people pushing back than there were previously. I still don't think it's enough. I still don't think it's a lot. But there are more people pushing back than have. And that's good momentum. So this from the New York Post: transgender high school runner in Oregon booed after winning girls' state title. So a biological male was crowned the Oregon girls 6A 200-meter state champion. Won the state title by 0.2 of a second, even though, that's not a lot. So, that girl who came in second must have been pretty fast and probably very deserving of having the state championship title. Here's the moment that this biological boy was crowned as the state champion and booed. So a moment at the end of the race. Yeah, I don't know if I would boo. The time to boo and jeer and throw a fit is before that race even happens. And this is a state like Oregon, where politics are very similar, and a lot of parents are like, oh, I can't say anything about that. The time to push back against this is before the kids are put in a situation like that. Before the kids are booed, before the boy's on the podium and pictures of him go all over the internet. Adults are failing. They're failing these kids, and they're failing to push back against true lunacy. Come on. And for the boy who placed first in Kashmir over the weekend, 10th isn't so bad. You could still participate with the boys, and you're just going to place 10th. You're not going to be a champion. But you shouldn't be able to just switch over and be a girls champion and rob. I've been there. I would venture to guess most of you have been there and participated in high school athletics or have children right now who are participating in high school athletics. That means the world to kids. To train and work hard and dedicate themselves to something and be among the best of the best. And for a young girl to do that and to then still lose because as hard as they train, as hard as they try, as many hours as they put in, they will never have the biological speed and strength of a boy. That's devastating. It's not right. Whenever we talk about this, I always think of Dory, because Dory was a girls' high school basketball coach, and they were very good. They were state champions. It was like one of the highlights of his life when his girls won the state championship. I cannot imagine having that joy taken away, and that how proud he was and how happy the girls were taken away because a biological boy was competing on the other team.
I agree. I think that it's a tough position for the coaches and the staff of these meets, because it all rests in the hands of the WIAA.
Right.
And so all of these parents are screaming at the coaches and the directors of these tournaments and stuff, and all of them are like, out of our hands. But then that never comes back on the WIAA. Yep. They all just sit back in their little booths and create these rules and then don't really take the heat. I'm sure that they get a lot of emails. Okay, well, we need some answers, and they don't like to talk about it.
I don't feel bad for the coaches.
Well, I
don't feel bad for the parents or the coaches. Those are adults. And like I said, you have every opportunity to go to the WIAA, to speak out publicly, to refuse to participate. I know it might cost you a job. A lot of high school coaches, though, that's not usually their full-time job, right? Some are teachers, right. They're protected by the teachers union, or some do it and they volunteer to do it.
It's a tough spot because then, yes, you're dealing with then being taken from coaching, and then your girls are left without a coach. Or it has to be this mentality of everybody fights together, or it's going to go nowhere. And there has to be more people that speak up against this and that go to these people than there are that bully online after this gets posted, because I think that's where this is I did talk to that parent that posted that, and I know his child would love to speak out against it, thinks it's wrong, but he said, well, that boy is really nice though. And so they just feel bad. Like they just get shamed into it because like, oh, he's really nice. And
nobody's saying he's not nice.
Nobody's saying it's not about that kid. It's the adults that make this decision. And it's not about the kid. Like ramp it up and fight back. Because
it's about the
this
system.
Is silly because I mean, as we're going to talk about in a little bit, it's just one person here or there that takes all of the heat, like the Alicia is of the world of Olympia, and then who we're going to talk about in the Maureen's of Friday Harbor. I think it's just it can't be all on these people to represent everyone. You've got to come together, like organize, have a meeting, discuss how you're going to go about this.
Yeah, and it'll get easier
I don't have a kid.
Less vitriolic the more people that do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see people being so viciously attacked because they're out on an island just doing it on their own and they're willing to take the L's. I mean, these coaches, you all know each other. The high school coaches, if you're a coach for girls, track team or girls basketball, you know the other coaches in the district. You know them. This is what it takes. One of them, you call another one of them, has common sense, and you tell them, what are we going to do about this? Like, are you willing? Are you willing to stand up with me and to not compete? And then they call somebody in the district. You say, are you willing to not compete? And then they call someone in the district. And you do that, and you get 10, 15, 20 coaches that say, we will not play a game. We will not play a game until the policy is changed. That's when you're going to start to affect change. And I'll even say, even the men's teams, if you care one bit about girls in sports and making sure that they have equal opportunities and fair play, we all know that it's the men's teams that bring in the money. It's the boys' teams that bring in the money and the fans and the notoriety. That's just how it is. So if you coach a boys' football team, boys' basketball team, boys' track, you do the same thing, and you do it freaking today. Sounded like a threat. You do it today. I don't care if you're the biggest school or the smallest school, and you call another coach, and they'll call another coach, and you all decide what day it is that you're putting your foot down and saying, we will not play until this changes.
And we'll support you.
And there's a lot of parents who'll support you too. Grow. And you do it in big numbers, and the blowback isn't going to be as severe as you think it will be, but even so, who cares? Who cares? I mean, this is a generational issue that it's time to push back on. And there are other people out there fighting. I want to give you an example. This was from our episode of Sundays with Subscribers yesterday, which kudos to Nicole, because you've been getting some wonderful guests for the show every Sunday, looking at some of these issues and unique interviews that you're not going to see anywhere else. And while the episode is behind a paywall, we wanted to play a couple clips from it for you today, because we're on this issue. And I mean, to me, these people who are willing to speak up, even though it disrupts their lives so much, I'm just so in awe of them. Maureen is one of them. So Maureen and her husband, Matt, live on Friday Harbor. Most of you will know where that is. It's on San Juan Island, just a little town. Mostly people just take a ferry out there and enjoy it. Very touristy area. But it's a small community. Well, Maureen and Matt, they had kids, and they had a daughter who was just, making her way up there in years in high school. And they started to realize that, like, there's an awful lot of kids and teens, even in our daughter's inner circle, who believe that they're transgender. And they, so much so that Maureen and Matt took note of it. And they're like, gosh, this is odd. And it wasn't just, changing their pronouns. It was teens who were going through medical intervention to change their gender. So Maureen talked a little bit about just what she was starting to notice.
The first time it really hit me was when I was aware of about, I think she was 14 or 15, and she was going through full transition to be a man, and was taking the hormones and had her breasts removed. And I just thought to myself, wow, that's a lot that for a young person to do at this age. And I started wondering, like, about how that happened or what kind of support, I just started realizing and noticing as another year or two went along that we had a lot of support for transitioning. Honestly, for me also personally, one day the girls were coming down the alley to the house, and I said, hey girls, and this is, 4 years ago or something. And they said, hey girls, and I said, you can't call us that anymore. And I go, really? I go, well, what can I call you? And they said, you can call us guys, and I was like, okay. So I was one of those parents who was slowly getting told the new way of things, the new way of talking, the new way of dealing with things. And I tried it first and I was going along pretty well. But after the young person had gone through the surgery, I was like, ooh, you know, that I just was starting to wonder. And then I started noticing another young person had their breast removed. And I was like, what's going on? I actually asked my daughter, I was kind of being silly, but I just said, okay, Lucy, I said, you have, a large circle of friends who are transgender. I said, are you going to stay my daughter? And she just kind of rolled her eyes at me and she knows I'm being silly, but she goes, yeah, probably.
So Maureen and Matt could have left it at that, right? They could have just said, that's weird. And as long as it's not happening to our daughter, no big deal. And besides, they'd already been sort of vilified in their community in Friday Harbor because Maureen, this is kind of a funny story. It's totally a tangent, but she didn't wear a mask in a grocery store at some point, like one of the only grocery stores. And actually there's only two and they're owned by the same people, banned her. So she was like left without a grocery store. So she's already like, well, half the town hates me, it's super liberal. So I might as well do something about this too. So Maureen and Matt decided to invite to Friday Harbor a detransitioner, a 23-year-old, now 23-year-old named Nicholas Blooms. And they said, we're going to bring Nicholas here and he can just give kids a different perspective. We'll host an event where he can speak and kids and parents can just hear this perspective of someone who started the process of transitioning from a boy to a girl and decided this was a mistake and transitioned back and talk about what he went through. Well, the local LGBTQ community on Friday Harbor did not like that very much. And they started pushing back, vilifying Maureen and Matt, and getting the event canceled. Not one venue, but two venues canceled Nicholas's appearance at the very last minute, to the point where he'd already flown in to talk to the community. And so at one point, he ends up speaking to folks on a sidewalk in front of the Grange after the Grange canceled his appearance. But even after, some angry activist adults in Friday Harbor got his venues canceled, they still showed up. This 23-year-old talking about his personal experience in dealing with this. They still showed up outside the Grange to harass him there on the sidewalk. Here's Maureen talking about that happening.
And it did hurt his feelings. Part of the reason that he felt he was trans was part of the reason why he had internal trauma was he was bullied as a child for being different. When they told him to go back to Chicago and they were so mean to him, I feel like it did hurt his feelings, but he's a strong person, so he's really understanding of like, that's not my pain. And he actually has healed himself from gender dysphoria. He was speaking about how we should love ourselves. He spoke to all of us. When he spoke to all of us with negative self-talk. He spoke to all of us who have, different kinds of issues. And he wasn't just speaking about one particular kind of gender dysphoria. It's just, like, love yourself. He said, my legs are beautiful. My arms are beautiful. Thank you, arms, for being here. Thank you, legs, for being here to carry me through life and things like that. And his message was beautiful. But it did hurt his feelings. I felt ashamed of our community members.
Yeah, and when you think about that, you as an adult, you can choose just not to show up. You could choose like, hey, there's this detransitioner that's going to speak at the Grange. I'm not going to go because I don't want to hear about that. I don't believe in that. But to say, I don't want to hear it so no one else can hear it, no one else can hear a message that I disagree with, that's where we are as a society. I agree with her. That's shameful of community members in Friday Harbor. To try to silence this young man who went through something very, very challenging and who is willing now to talk about it. And you don't want anyone to hear it. And you show up and you harass him with signs and with chants and jeers. What's wrong with you? You're adults. I mean, at what point do you realize that your ideology has taken over every fiber of your being and stopped you from thinking clearly? You don't have to agree with him, but let him talk to people who want to hear what he has to say. So anyway, on Sundays with Subscribers, not only do we talk to Maureen, who, man, I love Maureen. I'm sure I would have loved Matt too. He was fishing, I think, or something, and so Matt couldn't join Maureen. But I just so admire their commitment to what they believe in and to trying to get people to think about other perspectives. So anyway, we also got a chance on Sundays with Subscribers to have a long conversation with Nicholas about what he went through, medically and emotionally. And it was so eye-opening. I stopped him at various points in the interview and said, Nicholas, I've got goosebumps everywhere. A lot of what he talked about was hard to hear, very detailed, graphic, sort of what he went through sexually as a young man, taking gender hormones. And it's difficult to listen to, but it's stuff you've got to hear because it's so rare to hear that from a first-person perspective. But I asked him toward the end of our interview what advice he would give to young people who, like him, maybe are feeling influenced through social media, that they might be transgender.
Turn your phone off. I think that's the biggest social contagion is during the pandemic, people were on their phones all day long. So they were like, oh my God, there's nothing better to do than change my gender. That's the most exciting thing. Let's dye my hair. Let's chop my hair. It's just be yourself without doing all those things. You don't need medicalization. You don't need surgeries to be yourself. It's people have lost their selves. They have lost being human. And I'm like, turn your phones off. That's where we start. That's how we become connected to our bodies. That's how we relax our minds. That's how we can find ourselves again. When we turn our phones off.
Well, that's a good advice for most people. I think so many societal issues, we talk about the crime crisis and young people all the time. And it's they're playing Grand Theft Auto and, they're just disconnected from reality. And then just for parents, what is something your parents did that other parents might be able to do that can help a young person through this time in their lives?
I feel like if they're probably in their teen years, I would say really push back from the gender thing. Don't call them by their chosen name. Call them by a pet name if they have one. If it's just probably they just want things to be shifted. They just want something different. But don't call them by their preferred pronouns. Don't call them by the chosen name, just because that's just continuing to affirm a lie. We want to ground them in the truth and then smother them with love. They probably feel uncomfortable. They probably feel not loved. So maybe it's more have dinner together. I feel like families aren't connecting together anymore. And I think it's a lot of tension in the family, and maybe learning and discovering new ways where you can connect and have pauses and maybe cook dinner together. Find something new together that you can do so that you can step away from gender, because I feel like a lot of parents are just so focused on gender, but it's just they need a pause too, together, to have different memories than just yelling at each other. Let's pause and go out for a walk in nature. Let's just declutter all this so that we can actually be grounded when we have a conversation.
I mean, how good of advice is that? Seriously, you can watch our full interview with Nicholas and Maureen on yesterday's episode of Sundays with Subscribers at undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. You can sign up for just $5 a month. On Sundays, we always try to have these kind of unique, in-depth interviews on important issues. Man, I'll just say about Nicholas, one of the things that he spoke about that I think it touched me the most was how much better his relationship is with his parents now that he's detransitioned. And not because they hated him or something, but because he's so much happier in his body, being a boy as he was born, that it just improved the relationship he had with his parents. And he was going through so much mentally and emotionally, and it really was brainwashing through YouTube videos that were sort of, he'd watched a couple on with influencers who were trans, and then it just started, the algorithm just started putting those in his timeline over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where he was brainwashed into believing that he needed medical intervention. And look, I am not telling parents how to parent. I don't want to do that. But there is another side to this out there, and the media will never talk about it. The mainstream media, even platforming a detransitioner is dangerous for us, certainly, which is crazy to think about. But whenever, to vilify a kid who went through it and wants to talk about it on the back end, and to suggest that voice isn't relevant, that voice isn't important, is insane to me. If your kid's going through this, go as you would with anything, right? Any sort of, if your child had cancer, And, a doctor prescribed a certain sort of diet or a certain sort of path forward for care. Wouldn't you go and research, do a little research on your own and say, well, here's that person's experience and here's this person's experience. You do it with anything else. Why would you not do it if your child is saying that they want to switch genders? I mean, again, it's just crazy. So we so appreciate Nicholas, coming on with us and telling his story. And the speaking event he was supposed to do on Friday Harbor community, I'm sure some of you are great, but the rest of you, shame on you. Shame on you. That was his first speaking event ever. It's not like he's some sort of like nationally recognized detransitioner who's been on all the big shows and podcasts. That was the first time he was ever going to speak to people about his experience. And that's how the community of Friday Harbor welcomed him. Shameful stuff. Truly, truly unbelievable. But Maureen and Matt, oh, we love it. We love to see it. See? You speak out and we'll celebrate you on the show, even if other people want to vilify you, even if Maureen and Matt have no grocery stores on Friday Harbor that they're allowed into. That's fine. We'll be your friends. I already told Maureen on the Sunday show, I said, if you ever feel lonely like you need a friend, the undivided subscribers and Nicole and I will come up and hang out with you.
Definitely.
We'll just hang out,
I mean, we'll go fishing.
We'll go fishing. We'll do whatever. So I just love people like that. They give me so much hope that not all is lost. All right. Inflation. It is the silent portfolio killer. So you're saving for retirement, right? You're doing what you're supposed to do. You're putting money away. You're trying to figure out, what do I need? Well, with out of control inflation, what you're saving might not be enough. And so our friend Zach Abraham at Bulwark Capital, he recommends having a free Know Your Risk portfolio review, but specifically coming up on May 30th, they're going to do one of their free live webinars, and it's going to be all about inflation. So it's going to help you understand how inflation can impact your retirement portfolio, what you can do to mitigate it. You'll learn about Bulwark's risk management strategy, how they actively manage portfolios. They're always seeking to lower risk, lower cost, give you as much upside as possible. But especially right now, if you're getting close to retirement, you really need to understand how inflation is going to impact your ability to retire in the way that you're hoping to retire. So today, go to knowyourriskradio.com, knowyourriskradio.com. A little thing will pop up as soon as you go to the website, and you can sign up for Zach's special inflation webinar coming up Thursday, May 30th, totally free. You don't even have to participate. You can sit there on silent and just take all the information in. My mom did that once on one of these, and she learned a lot. It was so cute. She's like, I just got off the webinar with Zach. And I'm like, what? She's like, Zach Abraham with Bulwark Capital. I'm like, Mom, you're adorable. And now she's planning on using Zach to manage her retirement. So check that out, knowyourriskradio.com, knowyourriskradio.com, coming up on May 30th. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance does not guarantee future results. All right, a couple quick stories out of California as we dip into some national news that just show us, as bad as we are here, it could be worse. As bad as we are here, California is a little bit ahead of us on the craziness when it comes to crime and homelessness and substance abuse. Not too far ahead, but a little bit ahead of us. And so honestly, it makes me feel like a little better that we're not the only ones sitting on this, riding this crazy train. Or Oregonians and Californians are riding on it with us too. So a couple stories. Oakland locals blame homeless encampment for city removing traffic lights to stop copper thieves. God, this is government at its best. This is from Fox News at its worst, but at its best, because this is how government just functions. So there's this, in Oakland, there is this 4-way intersection with traffic lights, right? But there's a homeless camp nearby. And apparently some of the homeless people have been messing or had been messing with the traffic lights. It says a California city removed the traffic lights from a 4-way intersection as the city grapples with thefts attributed to a massive homeless encampment nearby. Oakland has been experiencing high crime and theft, including people stealing copper wires and the city's infrastructure. Okay. The city attempted to thwart criminals tampering with its electrical boxes by placing cement barriers over them, to no avail. Now the city has taken to removing the traffic lights at a busy intersection altogether and replacing them with stop signs. And I love this quote from a guy who owns an auto body shop nearby. It's just telling us that the city is giving up on us. If you really want to fix the stop light, I think you have to clean up this homeless encampment. And there was already, because of the homeless people tampering with that stoplight, there was an accident at the intersection. The way it is right now and how busy it is with the stop signs makes it difficult to navigate, according to people in the area. So isn't this just the way government works, failed government policies work? Instead of, I don't know, getting to the root of the problem and clearing up the homeless encampment because we know they're repeatedly coming and messing with the city infrastructure, they're messing with the stoplights, it's caused an accident, they're stealing copper wire, whatever it is. We've tried to put concrete barriers at great cost to the taxpayers. That didn't work. So rather than clear the homeless encampment, let's take the stoplights down and we'll just put up stop signs. If you thought that was crazy, another story out of California, this one in San Francisco, could not believe this. Our friend Tom Wolfe, who's a recovering addict from San Francisco, who we had on the show before, I saw him put this out and I was like, that might be the craziest thing I've ever heard related to the homeless crisis. And that is a very, very high bar. This from The Sun. Cheers, San Francisco spending tax dollars giving beer and vodka shots to the homeless. So this program apparently started during COVID-19, and the goal was to prevent alcohol withdrawal among homeless individuals placed in hotel rooms. So it was kind of going under the radar. You know, there was a lot happening during the pandemic, but now this program has expanded to 20 beds with a $5 million annual budget. The California Healthcare Foundation said of the program, quote, by prescribing limited quantities of alcohol, the model aims to prevent potentially life-threatening effects of alcohol withdrawal, such as seizures and injuries. San Francisco health officials claim the program has saved $1.7 million over 6 months in reduced hospital visits and emergency services utilization. So they're saying by prescribing, in their words, shots of vodka to the homeless alcoholics using taxpayers' funds, they're actually saving you money. And they're saving lives. I mean, again, I'm not going to laugh about it, but my dad died in a motel. Homeless, surrounded by alcohol bottles and empty beer cans.
So not because they were missing from the room.
Right. Right. He didn't die of a withdrawal. He died from a lifelong addiction to alcohol and drugs. And you're telling me that, oh, well, if the taxpayers had if they'd just been pouring shots and then just bringing him just the occasional shot of alcohol just to keep him just, yay, drunk, then he wouldn't have died. Wow. So you're saying then that these people are prohibited from leaving the hotel, right? Because the only way to make sure that they don't go out and get more alcohol above and beyond the shots that taxpayers are buying them would be to keep them in place, right? So you can tell me with confidence and certitude that they're not sneaking the alcohol in, that they're not going elsewhere and drinking alcohol, that the only alcohol they're consuming are the occasional shots that are being prescribed to them, courtesy of the taxpayer. Mentally insane. Mental. I cannot believe that people continue to vote for elected leaders who are okay with policies like that. You have lost your damn minds. All right, we'll get to questions and comments in our daily subscriber show poll coming up next. First, I have encouraged you to take the First Mark Challenge. If your budget is feeling stretched and you have not taken the First Mark Challenge yet, what else do I have to do? Because I'm giving you a way where you and your family can save money on something that you already have to have, and that's insurance. We hear from so many people, so many undivided fans who've taken the First Mark Challenge and who've saved money doing it. Because if you're just shopping on your own and you're going to the big box carriers, you might have more insurance than you need. And you might not be getting the best price. So what the First Mark Challenge entails is you go to First Mark, you schedule time to do the First Mark Challenge, takes half hour to an hour. You talk about your current insurance, your insurance needs. They go out, they shop all the carriers that are at their disposal, and they come back to you with a proposal. Casey in Covington says, thank you for telling us to check out the First Mark Challenge. He says he did it after receiving a ridiculous renewal statement from his insurance. So they ended up making the switch to policies with First Mark, walked away with slightly better homeowners insurance for the exact same price, and they saved 37% off their auto insurance. He said, right now, every dollar counts. Happy to join the First Mark family. Casey, we're happy to have you. There's a reason why Mike and I have all of our insurance through First Mark. There's a reason the Undivided podcast uses First Mark for our insurance needs as well. And that's because the customer service is unmatched, and they're going to make sure you have exactly what you need at the very best price that you can get it. So firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com, they work for you. All right, before we get to comments, let's get to our daily subscriber show poll, and it kind of takes us back to how we opened the show. We mentioned some of the things that the University of Washington agreed to with these anti-Israel protesters in order to get them to pack up and leave campus today. So I asked you guys, I picked out a few of them. I said, I said, here's a list of things the university agreed to. Which one do you find the most problematic out of these options? That they agreed not to punish students who participated, that they agreed to provide more scholarships for Gazans, or that they agreed to emphasize the work of their Islamophobia task force. And of course, I gave, for those of you who don't think any of those things are problematic, I did give you an option to say, none of these are a problem, Brandi. What are you talking about? So a lot of you are saying that the most offensive one is that they agreed not to punish students who participated. And I'm gonna, this is tough because I'm caught between two of them. Definitely that would be one of them, because not only are you letting them off, with what they've done and teaching them they can do it again, but you're also saying, and we will not, go after you for camping on, the quad, or, and we'll, when it comes to students who did this, we'll look at it very favorably that you've agreed to voluntarily leave. And so it just is like, wow, the sense of entitlement, is there any wonder why young people have such a sense of entitlement these days? The Islamophobia task force for me is probably the option I would have went with, just because it shows how truly oblivious and how truly ideological the university is. That you go through weeks of Jewish students being harassed, looking at anti-Semitic graffiti as they go to their classes on a campus where they pay a lot of money to attend, and you have the audacity to say that one of the things you're going to do coming out of this is not to weed out anti-Semitism on campus and to look at those issues, but to look at Islamophobia specifically and prioritize it. It grosses me out. It's so disgusting to me. That's literally, think of it. There's right-wing neo-Nazis on campus. And then the university came back and said, oh, if you guys agree to leave, we'll look at ways that we can, help white students. Can you imagine? The backlash just would have been crazy. Let's see. Liz R. says they shouldn't have given in to a single demand. It's teaching them that there are no consequences for bad behavior. I chose scholarships for Gazans because inviting people here that are possibly terrorists, hate our country, and do not want to assimilate is a horrible idea and dangerous for all of us. And I think there's a lot of people in Gaza and young people who had nothing to do with what Hamas did on October 7th. But I think, what are the standards for making sure that you don't have someone who's sympathetic to Hamas coming to an American college campus where there's already some pretty troubling anti-Semitism afoot? Y says, I really despise this culture of no consequences. Freedom does not mean free of consequences. In fact, it comes with accountability and acceptance of consequences of your choice and actions. It sickens me that the UW is giving in to the mob and has no integrity anymore. Truly ashamed that it's my alma mater. Heidi Ryan, once again, no consequences for actions. UW needs to clean up in more ways than one. And I'll be curious, from a monetary perspective, if there's any sort of notable drop in financial contributions to the university. Arnold K. says they should have made them clean up the graffiti. Yeah, as part of the deal, right? What did they give you besides just leaving? Are they going to clean up the graffiti? Tend to think probably not.
I heard them say, it's just paint.
It's just paint. Yeah, just
paint.
It's
pretty. What are you talking about?
It's like when they smash in the windows at Starbucks all the time and they say they have insurance. Starbucks is wealthy. They have insurance, as if that somehow makes it okay. It's just really, really wild stuff. I can't wrap my mind around it. There's nothing to wrap your mind around. Let me see. Rick Eckert with a $10 super chat. Rick, it was nice to meet you while we were out in Squim. He says he checked not holding them accountable. No punishment for camping is fine, but all the damage done to campus? No way. We know the cost of repairs will end up being paid by taxpayers. On Initiative 2066, which you need to sign ASAP if you want to. If you don't, that's okay. To make sure that we can keep natural gas as an option in our home and businesses, Liz says, I ordered a petition for I-20 2066. As of now, there aren't any signing locations in my city, and that's a great option. You can order a petition. It's also important to know that you don't have to fill it out all the way. So, keep it for a month and gather as many signatures as you can, but you can always mail it, and you have to mail it back in. Whether you've got 1 signature on there or 20 signatures, make sure you get it back in by the deadline. Crafty Grandma Crispy, I requested a couple sheets to take to Pacific Raceways track on Wednesday and Friday. Awesome. Al Kanitsky, what happens when my power goes out 5 to 7 times a year and my current generator runs the house on natural gas for the hours that the power is out? I don't like being dependent on one source of power, but that's the thing is, that's what Mike and I would do. And that's what we have done. When our power goes out, we have certain things that run on natural gas, but when our power goes out and our lights go out, plug in that gas generator and that thing for 24 hours a day. I'm sure that's great for the environment. Kathy Carr, we can't print them ourselves. No, I do not believe that you can just print them out. You do have to order them and be sent them. On the shooting near the youth baseball game, Matt Gilbert says, too many scholarships are on the line. I don't get it.
He's saying that that's why people aren't saying no to playing and why coaches aren't pulling their
so that's
kids
not
out
about
because
the baseball.
No,
shooting.
it is. Well, you were. Oh, sorry. Yes. No.
Okay, Nicole's fault again.
Sorry.
Per usual. I have hair in my mouth. Hold on. It's my own hair, I'm pretty sure. All right, Matt Gilbert on why more coaches and parents aren't speaking out about what's happening with transgender athletes. He says too many scholarships are on the line. Charles Hedrick says this is a problem for women to solve. All these young girls you talk about working hard and competing, etc., you have to refuse to participate. And I agree with that too. I do, because if not, you're just leaving it to the next grade and the next grade and the next grade, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So you have to decide, am I going to take a stand? Even if it costs me a second place finish or a first place finish, am I going to take a stand for other girls? Like Riley Gaines has done. Riley Gaines is like, this isn't right. And she took a lot of heat for it, but not from the people whose opinions we frankly care about. I mean, honestly, if you're going after Riley Gaines for saying she doesn't want to compete against a biological man, then you are ideologically unhinged. And why do you care about those people's opinions anyway?
Right. You just have to be stronger than those voices. You have to really just be tougher than those voices. That's all they are. They're just voices.
Yeah.
They're just words.
Yeah.
Sticks and stones, man.
On Nicholas, Diana Manning says, lovely young man. I was so impressed by Nicholas's wisdom and strength. Yeah, one of my favorite interviews we've had on Sundays with subscribers. And again, I was just like, but good advice for even families or kids that aren't going through any gender dysphoria stuff. Just getting back to the basics, like putting your phone down. And I think, so there's sometimes I'm sitting and I'm on the desk scroll, right? And I look at my phone and I throw it across the couch. I'm like, ugh, because I realize how long I've been on it.
Yep.
So it's like breaking that cycle of whatever the algorithm is trying to push at you on any given day. And then also just spending time together as a family. He said, touch some grass, cook dinner together as a family, and all this is stuff that really matters in connecting with your kids. But what also really struck me about that is the extent to which Washington State is trying to, cut parents out trying to make us believe that, parents can't possibly love their trans teens in the way the government can or in the way that teachers can, and let's keep secrets from parents. But for Nicholas, it was having his parents involved and opening up to them that helped him be comfortable with who he is.
Right.
And it's the antithesis of what we're doing in Washington State. So
absolutely. We're telling them they can be something different to make it better because they don't like who they are. And I don't understand that mentality. I understand, like, when you're an adult and you want to live wearing dresses and whatever, fine, go for it. But these kids that want to wear dresses to school, fine. But you cannot expect everybody to wrap themselves in your world, because
100%.
Everybody needs a fair playing field, and you are not giving these girls fair playing fields.
No. Krista M says, I loved his message of bringing families back together and learning together. Tracy said of Maureen on Friday Harbor, I'll come up and do her grocery shopping for her. We'll go into the grocery store, but I don't want to give that grocery store money.
True.
So it's like, Maureen, give
What
me
a
your
monopoly
order.
they've got.
Give me your order. We'll do a little, we'll ship it. We'll ship it like the Alaskans get their stuff shipped to them, But just ridiculous stuff.
It's
Good stuff. Was I forgetting something? No, we got all the super chats in. No. Okay, we'll get to our closing sanity check coming up momentarily. First, I want to remind you, so it was the grand opening weekend this past weekend at Natchez RV Resort. Remember, if you love RVing and you and your family have an RV, having a place like that is a luxury resort where you can, leave, you can go over there on a Friday. You could either leave your RV there or take it over there, and you've got everything. I mean, so much recreation, 300 days of sunshine. You got wine tasting nearby, this massive clubhouse, and the pool and the hot tub are coming soon. I mean, it really is a luxury experience. So they had their grand opening phase 2 weekend, but they still have some of these extra large lots left with water, sewer, power. And if you're watching this show and you decide to get one of these lots, you're probably going to be in good company, because Tig with Natchez RV Resort said the people who already have lots there are kind of people.
It's an awesome group of people. I can't say better things. It's all very like-minded people. I'm sure a lot of them listen to your show. It's a lot of people still living and working over here in the greater Seattle area that just want that home base to go to, and they want quality. They want to keep it a resort and not just have it be a park. And it's very tough these days with RVers for them to find a place to go, especially a quality spot. This is one they own. They can treat it like a second home, have their big RV sitting over there. If they get off work on a Friday and feel like just shooting over there, they know it's an option. They can also, when they're not using the lot, we have a great rental program where we can put it into the rental pool, and they can rent it back out for a weekend to the general public and have them bring some money coming in for them when they're not using it.
Yeah, and they've got lots starting at just $79.9 for all of that. I mean, what an awesome getaway for you and your family. Speaking of more family time, getting away and building memories together. So if you want to get one of these lots before they're gone, reserve now, 800-422-6009, 800-422-6009, or natchezrvresort.com. With that, let's get to our closing sanity check. Now, typically I don't like to make fun of our commander-in-chief too much about his mental slippage, because at some point it's like, gosh, how many more times can I play you a clip of President Biden wandering aimlessly or not knowing what he's talking about? But when we hear some of this stuff, it really is, and I take it back to the fact that we are now just a few months away from the November election. And it cannot be serious that Democrats are truly suggesting that President Biden is fit enough for a second term when he can't even remember whether he was the president or the vice president or during the pandemic.
And when I was vice president, things were kind of bad during the pandemic. And what happened was Barack said to me, go to Detroit and help fix it. Well, poor mayor, he spent more time with me than he ever thought he was going to have to.
Yeah, that guy can't be president for another month, let alone another term. That has been your sanity check for today, and that has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. We appreciate every single one of you, every last one of you. Remember, sign up to support our show, just $5 a month at undividedpod.com. And while you're there, shop our merch store. We have 25% off merch right now with the promo code SANITY24. That's SANITY, the number 24. We'll see you back here on the live show tomorrow at noon.